When my stepbrother stole my promotion, my fiancée, and convinced my father to make him CEO of our family's $5 billion empire, everyone thought I was finished. What they didn't know was that I had spent 3 years secretly building my own company, and I had insider knowledge of every dirty secret in their business. By the time I was done, my stepbrother was in federal prison, my ex-fiancée was working as a waitress, and I had acquired their entire empire for pennies on the dollar while building something 10 times bigger than they ever imagined. Before I tell you how a 28-year-old turned family betrayal into the most spectacular business revenge in corporate history, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. This story has more twists than a Hollywood thriller, and you'll want to hear every detail of how I systematically destroyed everyone who underestimated me. Let me know in the comments what you would have done if your own family chose your stepbrother over you. Now let me tell you the story of how I became the most feared CEO in American business. My name is Ryan Blackstone, and for the first 25 years of my life, I believed I was destined to inherit one of America's most successful family businesses. Blackstone Industries was a $5 billion conglomerate that my grandfather had built from a single manufacturing plant into a global empire spanning aerospace, defense contracting, renewable energy, and advanced materials. I had spent my childhood in boardrooms, my summers working in different divisions of the company, and my college years studying everything from engineering to finance to prepare for the day I would take over the family legacy. My father, William Blackstone, had always told me that leadership was earned, not given, but he had also made it clear that I was being groomed to eventually run the company. Everything changed when my father remarried. Catherine Morrison was a stunning woman in her early 40s who brought her 17-year-old son Marcus into our family when I was 22. My father had been alone for 5 years after my mother's death, and I was genuinely happy to see him find companionship again. Catherine was intelligent, charming, and seemed to genuinely care about my father's happiness. But Marcus was different. He was smart, ambitious, and possessed the kind of natural charisma that made people want to follow him. More importantly, he had an intuitive understanding of corporate politics that I had never developed. While I focused on learning the technical and operational aspects of our business, Marcus focused on learning how to influence people and build alliances. Within 2 years of joining our family, Marcus had transformed from an outsider into what many people considered my father's favorite son. He had a way of making my father laugh, of asking insightful questions about business strategy, and of positioning himself as the solution to problems that I hadn't even recognized existed. The shift in my father's attention was gradual but unmistakable. Where once he had included me in every major decision, now he increasingly turned to Marcus for advice and counsel. Where once I had been his companion at industry conferences and client meetings, now Marcus accompanied him while I was assigned to manage operational details. But I told myself that this was temporary, that my father was simply helping Marcus catch up on the years of preparation I had already received. I believed that when the time came for succession planning, merit and preparation would matter more than charm and politics. I was wrong about almost everything. The first major betrayal came during my senior year at Wharton, when I was completing my MBA while working part-time for Blackstone Industries. I had been developing a revolutionary new manufacturing process that could reduce costs by 30% while improving quality. The technology represented months of research and development, and I planned to present it to the board as my capstone project and proof of my readiness for senior leadership. Instead, Marcus presented my work to the board under his own name, claiming that he had been collaborating with our R&D team to develop innovative solutions for the company's manufacturing challenges. My father praised Marcus's initiative and innovation, and the board voted to implement the new process immediately. When I confronted Marcus privately about stealing my work, he smiled with the kind of cold confidence that I would learn to associate with his approach to competition. "Ryan, you need to understand something about business. Ideas are worthless unless you know how to sell them. You spent months developing a good solution, but you kept it to yourself until you thought it was perfect. I saw an opportunity to help the company immediately, so I took action. You stole my work and presented it as your own. I presented a solution that benefited the company. If you want credit for your ideas, you need to learn how to position yourself better." I complained to my father about Marcus's theft, expecting support and justice. Instead, I received a lecture about sibling rivalry and the importance of teamwork. "Ryan, I'm disappointed in your attitude. Marcus brought me a solution that will save the company millions of dollars, and instead of being proud of your contribution to his success, you're worried about getting credit. That's not the kind of thinking I expect from a future leader. Dad, I developed that entire process. Marcus had nothing to do with the research or the implementation, and Marcus had the vision to see how it could be implemented immediately, rather than sitting on it for months while you perfected every detail. Business is about results, not research projects." That conversation taught me two important lessons. First, my father had already begun to see Marcus as his heir apparent, regardless of my qualifications or preparation. Second, I was going to have to fight for my position in ways I had never anticipated. The second major betrayal was more personal and more devastating. Her name was Amanda Richardson, and she was the daughter of one of our company's major clients. We had met at a charity gala 2 years earlier, and our relationship had developed into something I believe was both genuine and strategically valuable for the company. Amanda was brilliant, beautiful, and came from a family with connections throughout the aerospace and defense industries. More importantly, I loved her completely. She was the first person I had ever met who understood both the pressures of family business expectations and the challenges of building something meaningful in a world where success was often measured purely by financial metrics. We had been engaged for 6 months, and our wedding was planned for the following spring. Amanda had begun working with our family's event planners, and we had started looking at houses in the neighborhoods where other corporate families lived. The betrayal began subtly. Amanda started asking questions about Marcus's role in the company, his future prospects, and his relationship with my father. She would mention conversations she'd had with him at family gatherings, always in the context of praising his intelligence or his insights about business strategy. "Ryan, I think you might be underestimating Marcus's potential contribution to the company," she said during dinner one evening. "He has a different perspective than you do, and I think that could be valuable for Blackstone Industries." "What kind of different perspective?" "He thinks more about market positioning and strategic partnerships. You focus on operations and efficiency, which is important, but Marcus understands how to build relationships that create long-term value." I should have recognized the warning signs, but I was too focused on my own preparations for joining the company's senior leadership to pay attention to the politics happening around me. The truth became obvious 3 months later, when I discovered Amanda and Marcus together in his apartment. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future that included Marcus taking over Blackstone Industries, with Amanda as his strategic partner and eventual wife. The confrontation was devastating, but illuminating. "Ryan, I'm sorry you had to find out this way," Amanda said, showing no genuine remorse. "But you need to understand that I have to think about my future, and Marcus represents better opportunities than you do." "Better opportunities." "We're engaged. We've been planning our life together for 2 years. We've been planning a life based on assumptions that aren't realistic. Your father clearly prefers Marcus, and Marcus has a better understanding of how to build political relationships that create business success. And you decided to switch sides without telling me." Marcus stepped forward, placing his hand possessively on Amanda's shoulder. "Ryan, Amanda made a choice based on what she believes is best for her future. You can't expect someone as talented as she is to limit herself because of personal loyalty that isn't reciprocated at the business level." "What does that mean?" "It means that your father has already made his decision about succession, even if he hasn't announced it officially. Amanda is smart enough to align herself with the winning side rather than hoping that merit alone will determine outcomes." That night I sat alone in my apartment, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. I hadn't just lost my fiancée. I had lost her to someone who represented everything I was competing against for my father's approval and the future of the family business. But more than that, I realized that I had been fighting the wrong battle. While I had focused on proving my competence and preparing for leadership responsibilities, Marcus had been building a coalition of supporters who believed he was the better choice for the company's future. The third and final betrayal came 6 months later, at the company's annual board meeting, where succession planning was officially addressed for the first time. I had spent the intervening months working harder than ever, taking on additional responsibilities, completing projects ahead of schedule, and trying to demonstrate that I was ready for senior leadership despite my youth. I had also begun developing relationships with board members, clients, and industry partners who I hoped would support my eventual promotion to senior management. But Marcus had been playing a longer and more sophisticated game. The board meeting was held at our corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago, in a conference room that overlooked the city where my grandfather had built his empire. 12 board members sat around a mahogany table that had witnessed decades of strategic decisions affecting thousands of employees and billions of dollars in economic value. My father began the meeting with a presentation about the company's performance and future strategic goals. Blackstone Industries was performing well, with revenue growth that exceeded industry averages and profit margins that positioned us as one of the most successful companies in our sector. Ladies and gentlemen, my father continued, as many of you know, I'm 62 years old, and it's time to begin implementing a formal succession plan that ensures continuity of leadership and strategic vision. I straightened in my chair, expecting to hear my name mentioned as the heir apparent who had been groomed for leadership since childhood. After extensive consideration and consultation with senior management, I'm pleased to announce that Marcus Morrison will be joining the company as Executive Vice President of Strategic Development, with the understanding that he will transition to Chief Executive Officer within 3 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the table at board members who avoided eye contact, some of whom I had known since childhood, all of whom had just voted to give my birthright to someone who had been part of our family for less than 4 years. Furthermore, my father continued, I'm pleased to announce that Marcus will be marrying Amanda Richardson next month, creating strategic partnerships between our company and the Richardson family's aerospace interests. I stood up without permission to speak, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Dad, what about me? What about 25 years of preparation? What about the work I've done, the education I've completed, the projects I've managed? My father's expression was cold and professional, the same look he gave to employees who questioned his decisions. Ryan, you'll continue to have important responsibilities within the company. Your technical expertise is valuable, and there will always be a place for you in operations and development. A place for me? This is my family's company. This is supposed to be my inheritance. This company belongs to our shareholders and our employees, not to any individual family member. Leadership positions are earned through demonstrated competence, not inherited through birthright. The irony of his words was breathtaking. Marcus had demonstrated no competence beyond stealing my work and seducing my fiancée, but he was being given the position that I had spent my entire life preparing for. And Marcus has demonstrated that competence. Marcus has shown exceptional strategic thinking, relationship building skills, and vision for the company's future growth. The board unanimously agrees that he represents our best opportunity for continued success. I looked around the table one more time, searching for any sign of support or even sympathy from people who had watched me grow up in the business. What I saw was a group of successful executives who had made a calculated decision based on their assessment of who would be more effective at protecting and growing their investment. I see, I said quietly. Then I guess there's nothing left to discuss. I walked out of that boardroom with everyone assuming that I had been defeated and humiliated. They expected me to either accept a subordinate role in the company or leave quietly to build a career somewhere else. They had no idea what I was actually planning. That evening, I drove to a bar in Lincoln Park, where I had arranged to meet someone who would become the most important partner in my eventual Revenge. Her name was Jessica Torres, and she was a former Blackstone Industries executive who had left the company 6 months earlier, under circumstances that had never been fully explained. Jessica was brilliant, ruthless, and possessed the kind of strategic intelligence that had made her one of the youngest VPs in company history. She had also been pushed out of the company by my father and Marcus in what was officially described as a reorganization, but which was actually a purge of executives who might have supported my eventual promotion. "Ryan," she said as I sat down across from her, "I heard about today's board meeting." "I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. You saw this coming?" "I saw it coming 18 months ago, when your father started bringing Marcus to senior staff meetings and asking for his opinions on strategic matters. It was obvious that he was positioning Marcus as his successor and eliminating anyone who might object to that decision. Jessica was in her early 30s, with the kind of focused intelligence that made her intimidating to work with but invaluable as an ally. She had been responsible for some of Blackstone Industries' most successful acquisitions and partnerships, and her departure had been a significant loss for the company's strategic planning capabilities. Is that why you left? I left because your father made it clear that executives who were loyal to you would have limited advancement opportunities under Marcus's leadership. I could either adapt to the new power structure or find opportunities elsewhere. And you chose to leave. I chose to wait for the right opportunity to compete with them directly. She opened a leather portfolio and showed me documents that made my heart race with possibility. Ryan, for the past 6 months, I've been building something that could become a direct competitor to Blackstone Industries. I've identified market opportunities that your family's company is too conservative to pursue, and I've recruited key talent who left Blackstone for the same reasons I did. The documents outlined a comprehensive business plan for a company that would focus on the most innovative and profitable aspects of aerospace and defense contracting. Instead of trying to compete across all sectors like Blackstone Industries, this new company would specialize in advanced materials, cutting-edge manufacturing processes, and next-generation technology solutions. What would you need to make this work? Capital, connections, and someone with insider knowledge of Blackstone Industries' strategic vulnerabilities. How much capital? $50 million to start, with the potential to raise an additional $200 million from private investors once we can demonstrate initial success. I thought about the trust fund that my grandfather had established for me, which would become fully accessible when I turned 28 in 6 months. The fund contained approximately $75 million that had been intended to provide me with financial security while I learned to manage the family business. Jessica, what if I told you that I could provide the capital and the insider knowledge? What would you need from me in terms of connections and strategic planning? Her smile was predatory and beautiful. I'd need you to help me recruit the best talent from Blackstone Industries, provide intelligence about their upcoming projects and client relationships, and help me position our company to win contracts that they think belong to them automatically. And in return, you'd be the founding CEO of a company that could become larger and more successful than Blackstone Industries within 5 years. Plus, you'd have the satisfaction of beating Marcus and your father at their own game, using strategies they taught you. That conversation changed everything. Over the next 6 months, while I continued working at Blackstone Industries in my diminished role, Jessica and I secretly built the foundation for what would become Phoenix Aerospace. The name was intentional. We were rising from the ashes of our defeats at Blackstone Industries to create something better than what we had lost. My trust fund became available on my 28th birthday, and I immediately invested $60 million into Phoenix Aerospace. Jessica used her network of former Blackstone employees to recruit a core team of engineers, project managers, and business development specialists who had been undervalued or overlooked by the existing leadership. But our real advantage wasn't money or talent. It was information. During my final year at Blackstone Industries, I had access to strategic planning documents, client contracts, competitive intelligence, and internal communications that revealed every aspect of the company's operations. I copied everything I could legally access, and I used that information to help Phoenix Aerospace avoid Blackstone's mistakes while capitalizing on opportunities they were too conservative to pursue. The most valuable intelligence concerned Blackstone Industries' approach to government contracting. My father and Marcus were focused on maintaining existing relationships and incrementally expanding their market share, but they were missing revolutionary opportunities in emerging technology sectors. Phoenix Aerospace positioned itself to win contracts for drone technology, satellite communications, advanced materials for space exploration, and renewable energy systems for military applications. These were markets that Blackstone Industries considered too risky or too speculative, but which represented billions of dollars in potential revenue for companies willing to invest in cutting-edge solutions. Within 18 months of leaving Blackstone Industries, Phoenix Aerospace had secured over $400 million in government contracts and had established partnerships with 3 major defense contractors who were impressed by our innovative approach and rapid execution. But building a successful company was only the first part of my revenge strategy. The second part involved systematically destroying the people who had betrayed me. Marcus's first mistake was underestimating my capacity for strategic thinking. He had spent so much time focused on stealing my position that he never considered what I might do with the knowledge and resources I had accumulated during my years of preparation for leadership. His second mistake was assuming that I would disappear quietly after being passed over for promotion. Instead, I used my remaining access to Blackstone Industries systems to gather intelligence about every aspect of their operations, their strategic plans, and most importantly, their vulnerabilities. What I discovered was both shocking and useful for my revenge planning. Marcus and Amanda were not just stealing my inheritance and my fiancée. They were also stealing from Blackstone Industries itself. Over the past 2 years, they had been using their positions in relationships to engage in a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that had already cost the company over $20 million. The scheme involved creating shell companies that appeared to be legitimate suppliers and contractors. These companies would submit invoices for services or materials that were never actually provided, and Marcus would approve the payments through his position as Executive VP of Strategic Development. The money would then be transferred through a series of offshore accounts before ending up in personal investments controlled by Marcus and Amanda. But their theft was just the beginning of what I uncovered. My father, who had built his reputation on integrity and ethical business practices, had been systematically bribing government officials to secure defense contracts for Blackstone Industries. The bribes were disguised as consulting payments to companies owned by the officials' family members. But the pattern was clear and well documented in financial records that I had access to as a senior employee. Even more damaging was evidence that Blackstone Industries had been knowingly selling defective components to the military, components that could fail catastrophically and result in the deaths of service members. The defects had been identified by quality control teams, but my father and Marcus had decided to ship the products anyway, rather than absorb the cost of manufacturing delays. This information gave me everything I needed to destroy them completely, but I had to be strategic about how I used it. If I simply turned the evidence over to authorities immediately, Marcus and my father might find ways to minimize the damage or shift blame to subordinates. I needed to coordinate my attack carefully to ensure maximum devastation. The first phase of my intelligence war involved recruiting allies within Blackstone Industries who could provide me with ongoing information about their operations and strategic decisions. Jessica's network of former employees had maintained relationships with key personnel who were unhappy with the direction the company had taken under Marcus's influence. These sources provided me with real-time intelligence about contract negotiations, strategic planning discussions, personnel changes, and internal conflicts that I could use to position Phoenix Aerospace competitively while preparing my eventual assault on Marcus and my father. The second phase involved building relationships with government officials, industry analysts, and journalists who would be crucial for exposing Blackstone Industries' illegal activities when the time was right. I spent months cultivating these relationships through industry conferences, charity events, and social gatherings, where I could present myself as a concerned industry insider who was worried about ethical standards in defense contracting. The third phase was the most complex and satisfying: psychological warfare designed to make Marcus and Amanda paranoid, stressed, and prone to making mistakes that would accelerate their downfall. I began by using my industry connections to spread rumors about Phoenix Aerospace's rapid growth and innovative capabilities. These rumors were designed to reach Marcus and Amanda indirectly, creating the impression that I was building something that could threaten Blackstone Industries' market position. The rumors worked exactly as I had hoped. Within weeks, Marcus was asking questions about Phoenix Aerospace, trying to determine what we were working on and how we had secured such significant contracts so quickly. His inquiries revealed that he was worried about competition and concerned about his ability to maintain Blackstone Industries' dominance in key market sectors. But the real psychological pressure came from a more personal source. I had maintained contact with several mutual friends and business associates who were part of Marcus and Amanda's social circle. Through these connections, I began feeding them carefully crafted information about my success with Phoenix Aerospace, my new relationships with influential people in the industry, and my apparent happiness and confidence despite being betrayed by my family. The message I wanted to convey was clear. Not only had I survived their betrayal, but I was thriving in ways that exceeded anything I could have achieved by staying at Blackstone Industries. This psychological campaign was designed to make Marcus and Amanda question their decision to betray me. I wanted them to wonder whether they had made a mistake, whether I was planning some kind of revenge, and whether their apparent victory was actually setting them up for a larger defeat. The campaign worked better than I had expected. According to my sources, Marcus was becoming increasingly paranoid about Phoenix Aerospace's activities and was demanding detailed competitive intelligence reports from Blackstone Industries' business development team. Amanda was asking questions about my personal life and financial situation, apparently concerned that I might be planning some kind of retaliation, but the most satisfying evidence of their psychological distress came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Walsh, who had been Amanda's maid of honor at her wedding to Marcus, called me 6 months after Phoenix Aerospace launched to ask if we could meet for coffee. Rebecca and I had been friends before my relationship with Amanda, and she had been uncomfortable with Amanda's betrayal, but had remained loyal to their friendship. "Ryan, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but Amanda has been asking a lot of questions about you lately." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about your business, your relationships, your financial situation. Basically, she wants to know whether you're as successful as people are saying." "And what are people saying?" "That Phoenix Aerospace is growing faster than anyone expected, that you're being courted by major investors, and that you seem happier and more confident than you ever were when you were working for your father." Rebecca paused, looking uncomfortable with what she was about to reveal. "Ryan, I think Amanda is having second thoughts about her decision to leave you for Marcus." "What makes you say that?" "She keeps comparing Marcus unfavorably to you. She talks about how you would have handled business situations differently, how you had better long-term judgment, how you were more genuine in your relationships." "But she's married to Marcus now." "She's married to Marcus, but I don't think she's happy. Marcus is completely obsessed with work and proving himself to your father. He doesn't pay attention to her the way you did, and I don't think he understands her ambitions for their partnership." This information confirmed that my psychological warfare was succeeding beyond my expectations. Not only was I making Marcus paranoid about business competition, but I was also creating stress in his personal relationships that could lead to additional mistakes and vulnerabilities. But Rebecca had more information that would prove crucial for the final phase of my revenge strategy. "Ryan, there's something else you should know. Amanda told me that she's been keeping detailed records of Marcus's business activities because she's worried about some of the decisions he's been making." "What kind of records?" "Financial records, meeting notes, communications with clients and government officials. Basically, she's been documenting everything because she wants to protect herself if Marcus ever gets into legal trouble." "Does Marcus know about these records?" "I don't think so. Amanda's keeping them in a safe deposit box that she opened under her maiden name. She told me that she learned from watching your family that you should always have insurance against the people you're closest to in business." This was exactly the kind of information I needed to complete my revenge strategy. Amanda's records would provide independent verification of Marcus's illegal activities, and her paranoia about protecting herself suggested that she could be convinced to cooperate with authorities if she believed that cooperating was her best option for avoiding criminal prosecution. But I needed to be patient and strategic about how I use this intelligence. If I moved too quickly, Marcus and my father might have time to destroy evidence or develop legal defenses that could minimize their punishment. Instead, I decided to escalate the psychological pressure while continuing to build Phoenix Aerospace into a company so successful that my eventual victory would be both complete and undeniable. While I was conducting psychological warfare against Marcus and Amanda, Phoenix Aerospace was winning the real war that mattered most, the competition for market dominance in the most profitable sectors of the defense and aerospace industries. Our success was built on 3 strategic advantages that Blackstone Industries couldn't match: superior technology, better relationships with key decision-makers, and the kind of aggressive innovation that established companies were too conservative to pursue. The superior technology came from our recruitment of the best engineers and researchers who had left Blackstone Industries due to frustration with the company's risk-averse culture. These people brought cutting-edge expertise in materials science, aerodynamics, satellite communications, and renewable energy systems that allowed us to develop products that were genuinely better than anything our competitors offered. Our better relationships were the result of my strategic networking campaign, which had positioned me as a rising leader in the industry who was worth cultivating for future opportunities. Unlike my father and Marcus, who relied on established connections and traditional business approaches, I had built relationships with younger government officials, innovative procurement specialists, and forward-thinking military commanders who were looking for suppliers who could deliver next-generation solutions. But our most important advantage was our willingness to take risks that Blackstone Industries considered too speculative. While they focused on incremental improvements to existing products, we invested in revolutionary technologies that could transform entire market sectors. The first major victory came when Phoenix Aerospace won a $200 million contract to develop next-generation drone technology for the Air Force. This was a contract that Blackstone Industries had assumed they would win automatically, based on their long-standing relationship with Air Force procurement officials and their experience in related technology sectors. Instead, our proposal was selected because we offered capabilities that were 2 generations ahead of anything Blackstone could provide, at a cost that was 15% lower than their bid. The contract announcement was covered extensively in defense industry publications, with several articles noting that Phoenix Aerospace was disrupting established players and bringing innovative thinking to government contracting. More importantly, the coverage mentioned that Phoenix Aerospace had been founded by former Blackstone Industries executives who left to pursue more aggressive innovation strategies. The psychological impact on Marcus was immediate and obvious. According to my sources within Blackstone Industries, he spent the entire week after the contract announcement demanding explanations from his business development team about how they had failed to anticipate our competitive capabilities. But the real satisfaction came from a conversation I had with my father 3 days after the contract was announced. He called me personally, something he hadn't done since I left Blackstone Industries 18 months earlier. "Ryan, congratulations on the Air Force contract. It's an impressive achievement for such a new company." His tone was professional but strained, suggesting that he was struggling with the realization that I had built something that could compete directly with the company he had spent decades developing. "Thank you, Dad. We're very proud of the technology we've developed and the relationships we've built with key decision makers. I'm curious about your long-term strategy. Are you planning to compete directly with Blackstone Industries across all sectors, or are you focusing on specific market niches?" The question revealed everything I needed to know about his state of mind. He was worried about Phoenix Aerospace's potential impact on Blackstone Industries' market position, and he was trying to determine whether I was building a company that could eventually threaten his legacy. "We're focusing on opportunities where we can provide superior value through innovation and efficiency. If those opportunities happen to compete with Blackstone Industries, that's just the nature of a competitive marketplace. Ryan, I hope you understand that there's room for multiple successful companies in this industry. Competition can be healthy as long as it's conducted professionally and ethically." The irony of hearing my father lecture me about ethics while knowing about his bribery schemes and defective product sales was almost overwhelming. But I maintained my professional tone while delivering a message that he would understand was more than casual conversation. "Dad, I completely agree about the importance of ethical competition. In fact, I believe that companies with the highest standards of integrity and transparency will eventually dominate this industry, while companies that cut corners or engage in questionable practices will face serious consequences." There was a long pause before he responded. "I'm sure that's true, Ryan. The industry has been moving toward greater accountability and oversight for several years now." "Exactly. Which is why I'm confident that Phoenix Aerospace will continue to grow and succeed. We've built our entire culture around doing things the right way, even when it's more difficult or expensive in the short term." After that conversation, I knew that my father understood I was positioning Phoenix Aerospace as a direct threat to Blackstone Industries, and that I was doing so with full knowledge of his company's vulnerabilities. The second major victory came 6 months later, when Phoenix Aerospace won a $350 million contract to develop advanced satellite communication systems for the Navy. This was an even more significant competitive victory because Blackstone Industries had been the Navy's primary supplier for similar systems for over 15 years. Our victory was based on technology that was so superior to existing solutions that the Navy's procurement evaluation team described our proposal as representing a paradigm shift in satellite communication capabilities. The contract would position Phoenix Aerospace as the preferred supplier for next-generation military communications, with potential follow-on contracts worth over $1 billion. But the most satisfying aspect of this victory was the way we had obtained the intelligence necessary to develop our winning proposal. Marcus had been so focused on traditional relationship-building approaches that he had failed to recognize that the Navy's procurement priorities had shifted toward innovative technology solutions, rather than incremental improvements to existing systems. Our sources within Blackstone Industries had provided us with copies of their proposal drafts, which allowed us to position our technology as specifically addressing the limitations of their approach. In other words, we had used their own strategic planning against them to win a contract that they had assumed was theirs to lose. The industry coverage of this second major victory was even more extensive and more damaging to Blackstone Industries' reputation. Defense News ran a feature article titled, "The Phoenix Rises: How Former Blackstone Executives Are Disrupting Defense Contracting," which detailed our rapid growth and suggested that established companies were struggling to compete with more agile and innovative competitors. But the most devastating coverage appeared in Forbes, which published an article titled, "The Student Becomes the Master: How Ryan Blackstone Is Building an Empire That Could Eclipse His Father's Legacy." The article included interviews with industry analysts who predicted that Phoenix Aerospace could become larger than Blackstone Industries within 5 years if current growth trends continued. More importantly, the article included quotes from unnamed sources who suggested that younger leadership in more aggressive innovation strategies were giving Phoenix Aerospace competitive advantages that established companies couldn't match. According to my sources, Marcus was furious about the Forbes article and had demanded that Blackstone Industries' public relations team develop a media strategy to counter our positive coverage. But their efforts were ineffective because they were based on defending past achievements rather than demonstrating future capabilities. The psychological pressure was finally beginning to show visible effects on both Marcus and Amanda. Industry colleagues who attended the same social events reported that Marcus appeared stressed and defensive when discussing Blackstone Industries' competitive position. Amanda was described as withdrawn and anxious, no longer projecting the confidence and ambition that had characterized her public persona during the early days of her marriage to Marcus. But I wasn't finished applying pressure. The third phase of my market warfare strategy was designed to demonstrate that Phoenix Aerospace wasn't just winning individual contracts. We were fundamentally changing the competitive dynamics of the entire industry. The most devastating attack I could launch against Blackstone Industries wasn't financial or technological. It was human. The company my father had built depended on the expertise and relationships of key employees who had developed their skills over decades of working in specialized market sectors. If I could recruit the best talent from Blackstone Industries, I would simultaneously strengthen Phoenix Aerospace while weakening our primary competitor. More importantly, I would be sending a message that the most capable people in the industry believed Phoenix Aerospace offered better opportunities for their careers and their professional development. The talent recruitment campaign began with Jessica's network of former Blackstone Industries executives, but it quickly expanded to include current employees who were dissatisfied with the direction the company had taken under Marcus's leadership. Our first major recruitment victory was Dr. Sarah Kim, who had been Blackstone Industries' Chief Technology Officer for 8 years and was widely recognized as one of the most innovative engineers in the defense industry. Sarah had been responsible for many of Blackstone Industries' most successful product developments, but she had been increasingly frustrated by Marcus's emphasis on short-term profitability over long-term innovation. When I approached Sarah about joining Phoenix Aerospace, she was immediately interested in our mission and our commitment to pushing technological boundaries rather than just incrementally improving existing products. "Ryan," she said during our first recruitment conversation, "I've been watching what you're building at Phoenix Aerospace, and I'm impressed by your willingness to take risks that established companies won't consider. The work you're doing with drone technology and satellite communications is exactly the kind of innovation I've been trying to convince Blackstone to pursue for years. What's been preventing Blackstone from pursuing those opportunities?" Marcus and your father are too concerned about protecting existing revenue streams to invest in revolutionary technologies. They want innovation that's guaranteed to succeed, which is a contradiction in terms when you're talking about breakthrough developments. Sarah's recruitment was crucial not just because of her technical expertise, but because of the message it sent to other Blackstone Industries employees. If the company's CTO was willing to leave for Phoenix Aerospace, it suggested that we offered better opportunities for professional growth and meaningful work. Within 6 months of Sarah's arrival, 12 additional Blackstone Industries employees had followed her to Phoenix Aerospace. These included 3 senior engineers, 2 project managers, 1 business development director, and 6 technical specialists who brought decades of experience and institutional knowledge from our primary competitor. But the recruitment that caused the most damage was Michael Chen, Blackstone Industries' chief financial officer, and one of my father's most trusted advisors. Michael had been with the company for 15 years and had been instrumental in securing the financing for several major acquisitions and expansion projects. Michael's decision to join Phoenix Aerospace wasn't motivated by dissatisfaction with Marcus's leadership. It was motivated by his discovery of the illegal activities that Marcus and my father had been concealing from the board and senior management. "Ryan," he said during our recruitment meeting, "I need to tell you something that's going to be very difficult to hear, but which explains why I can't continue working for Blackstone Industries." He opened a briefcase containing financial documents that detailed the bribery schemes, the embezzlement activities, and the fraudulent reporting that had been happening at Blackstone Industries for the past 3 years. "I discovered these irregularities 6 months ago during a routine audit of government contract expenses. When I brought my concerns to your father, he told me that the payments were legitimate consulting fees and that I should focus on my own responsibilities rather than questioning strategic decisions. But you didn't believe that explanation? The pattern was too obvious to ignore. Shell companies with no legitimate business operations, payments that corresponded exactly to contract award dates, offshore accounts that couldn't be reconciled with any legitimate business purpose. It was clearly a systematic corruption scheme. Michael's evidence was even more comprehensive than what I had gathered through my own intelligence operations. As CFO, he had access to detailed financial records that proved not only the existence of illegal activities, but the specific amounts of money involved and the individual bank accounts where the proceeds had been deposited. "Michael, why are you bringing this to me instead of to federal authorities?" "Because I believe you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening at the company your grandfather built, and because I think Phoenix Aerospace represents an opportunity to build something better than what Blackstone Industries has become under your father's current leadership." Michael's recruitment was the final piece of intelligence I needed to complete my revenge strategy. With his financial expertise and his documentary evidence of illegal activities, I now had everything necessary to destroy Marcus and my father, while positioning Phoenix Aerospace to acquire Blackstone Industries' most valuable assets at distressed prices. But before I could implement the final phase of my plan, Marcus made a mistake that accelerated the timeline for his destruction. As Phoenix Aerospace continued to win major contracts and recruit top talent from Blackstone Industries, Marcus became increasingly desperate to regain competitive advantage through methods that revealed his fundamental lack of strategic thinking. Instead of focusing on innovation or operational improvements, Marcus decided to attack Phoenix Aerospace through industrial espionage and corporate sabotage. The first indication of his desperation came when our computer security team detected attempts to hack into Phoenix Aerospace's servers and steal proprietary information about our technology developments and client relationships. The attacks were sophisticated but traceable to IP addresses that originated from computer systems within Blackstone Industries' corporate network. "Ryan," said David Park, our Chief Information Security Officer, "these aren't random hacker attacks. Someone with significant resources and technical capabilities is specifically targeting our most sensitive business intelligence. Can you trace the attacks to their source?" "We can trace them to computers within Blackstone Industries, but we can't determine which specific individuals are responsible without cooperation from law enforcement." This information confirmed that Marcus was willing to engage in criminal activities to compete with Phoenix Aerospace, but I needed more evidence before I could take action that would be effective and legally defensible. The second indication of his desperation was more personal and more reckless. Amanda contacted me directly for the first time since our engagement ended, asking if we could meet privately to discuss business matters that might be mutually beneficial. I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a restaurant in downtown Chicago that was public enough to prevent any inappropriate behavior, but private enough for sensitive conversations. Amanda arrived looking stressed and anxious, very different from the confident woman who had left me for Marcus 2 years earlier. Her appearance suggested that her marriage wasn't providing the happiness and security she had expected when she chose Marcus over me. "Ryan, I want to thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know this is awkward given our history, but I have information that you need to know about." "What kind of information?" "Information about illegal activities at Blackstone Industries that could destroy the company and send several people to federal prison." She opened her purse and pulled out a flash drive containing what she claimed were copies of financial records, communication logs, and other evidence documenting the corruption schemes that Marcus and my father had been operating. "Why are you bringing this to me instead of to authorities?" Amanda's expression revealed the calculation behind her apparent concern about illegal activities. "Because I believe you're in a position to handle this information in a way that protects innocent people, while ensuring that the responsible parties face appropriate consequences." "What do you mean by innocent people?" "I mean people like me, who discovered illegal activities after they had already been implemented, and who tried to document them for protective purposes, rather than participating in them." This was exactly what Rebecca had predicted. Amanda was trying to position herself as a witness against Marcus, rather than an accomplice to his crimes. "Amanda, are you asking me to help you avoid criminal prosecution in exchange for evidence against Marcus?" "I'm asking you to consider that some people who are associated with these activities aren't actually guilty of criminal behavior and shouldn't be punished for other people's decisions." The conversation revealed that Amanda was finally understanding the full scope of what Marcus had involved her in, and she was desperately trying to find a way to escape the consequences of her association with his illegal activities. But her approach demonstrated the same selfish calculation that had characterized her decision to leave me for Marcus. She wasn't motivated by genuine remorse or concern about justice. She was motivated by fear about her own legal exposure and her desire to find someone who could protect her from the consequences of her choices. "Amanda, I appreciate you bringing this information to me, but I can't make any commitments about protecting you from legal consequences. If you're genuinely concerned about illegal activities at Blackstone Industries, you should take your evidence to federal authorities and cooperate with their investigation." "But Ryan, you have influence in the industry now. You have relationships with government officials who could ensure that cooperating witnesses are treated fairly. What I have is a commitment to ethical business practices and respect for legal processes. If you want to do the right thing, you should contact the FBI and offer to cooperate with their investigation without conditions or expectations of special treatment." Amanda left that meeting disappointed and increasingly desperate, but she had provided me with additional evidence that would be useful for the final phase of my revenge strategy. More importantly, her approach confirmed that Marcus's coalition was beginning to collapse under the pressure of their illegal activities and the competitive threat that Phoenix Aerospace represented. The third and most reckless indication of Marcus's desperation came 2 weeks later, when he attempted to recruit Phoenix Aerospace employees to return to Blackstone Industries with our proprietary information and client intelligence. The approach was made to Dr. Sarah Kim, who immediately reported it to me and agreed to cooperate with documenting Marcus's attempt to steal trade secrets. "Ryan, Marcus called me yesterday and offered me a 50% salary increase to return to Blackstone Industries as their new CTO. When I declined, he offered me an additional signing bonus of $2 million. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I was happy at Phoenix Aerospace and wasn't interested in returning to Blackstone. But then he made it clear that the offer wasn't just about my employment." "What do you mean?" "He specifically asked me to bring copies of our technology developments, our client contracts, and our strategic planning documents. He said that Blackstone Industries needed to understand the competitive landscape in order to develop effective counter-strategies. This was industrial espionage, a federal crime that could result in decades of prison time for Marcus and significant additional legal problems for Blackstone Industries. But the most satisfying aspect of Marcus's attempted recruitment was that it demonstrated how thoroughly I had outmaneuvered him strategically. Instead of focusing on building better products or developing superior client relationships, he was trying to steal the innovations that Phoenix Aerospace had developed through superior talent and more effective strategic thinking. Sarah had agreed to record any future communications from Marcus, and we had contacted federal authorities about his attempts to steal trade secrets. Within a week, the FBI had initiated an investigation into Blackstone Industries' competitive intelligence activities. The investigation would eventually expand to include the bribery schemes, the embezzlement activities, and the fraudulent reporting that Michael Chen had documented. But the initial focus on industrial espionage would provide a foundation for broader criminal prosecutions. Marcus's desperation had given me everything I needed to complete his destruction, but I still wanted to deliver one final psychological blow that would ensure he understood exactly how completely he had been outmaneuvered. The opportunity for delivering the final blow came 6 months later, when the defense industry's most prestigious annual conference was held in Washington, D.C. The conference attracted senior executives from every major contractor, government procurement officials, military leadership, and industry analysts who would shape the future of defense spending and strategic priorities. Phoenix Aerospace was scheduled to present our latest technology developments and announce several new government contracts that would establish us as one of the top 3 suppliers in our market sector. The presentation was being held in the main conference hall, with an expected audience of over 800 industry professionals, but I had arranged for additional drama that would make the presentation memorable for reasons that Marcus and my father would never forget. 2 days before the conference, the FBI had completed their investigation of Blackstone Industries and had prepared sealed indictments against Marcus, my father, and 3 other senior executives for bribery, embezzlement, industrial espionage, and conspiracy to defraud the government. The timing of the arrests had been coordinated with federal prosecutors to ensure maximum impact on Blackstone Industries, business operations, and public reputation. The indictments would be unsealed immediately after Phoenix Aerospace's conference presentation, creating a dramatic contrast between our company's success and our competitors' criminal exposure. But I had also arranged for additional revelations that would demonstrate the full scope of my strategic planning and the complete thoroughness of my revenge. The Phoenix Aerospace presentation began with a review of our rapid growth and our successful competition for major government contracts. The audience was impressed by our technological innovations, our efficient operations, and our rapid expansion from a startup to a major industry player in less than 3 years. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said as the presentation reached its climax, "Phoenix Aerospace has achieved this success through superior innovation, ethical business practices, and our commitment to supporting our clients' mission-critical requirements." The next slide showed our financial performance, which demonstrated revenue growth that exceeded industry averages and profit margins that positioned us as one of the most successful companies in the defense sector. But our most important achievement isn't financial. It's the culture of integrity and excellence that we've built with the industry's most talented professionals. The following slide displayed photographs and biographical information about our senior leadership team, including the 12 former Blackstone Industries employees who had joined Phoenix Aerospace over the past 2 years. These exceptional professionals chose to join Phoenix Aerospace because they believed in our mission and our values. They left established companies to help build something better, something that represents the highest standards of innovation and ethical conduct. I paused to let the audience absorb the implications of what I was presenting. Everyone in the industry knew that recruiting top talent from established competitors required offering superior opportunities and demonstrating superior leadership. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Phoenix Aerospace has been selected as the primary contractor for 3 additional government programs worth a combined total of $1.2 billion over the next 5 years. The audience responded with applause and expressions of surprise at the magnitude of our contract awards. Phoenix Aerospace was now competing directly with the largest defense contractors in the world and winning based on superior capabilities rather than just competitive pricing. But the real surprise came with the final slide of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also pleased to announce that Phoenix Aerospace has entered into negotiations to acquire the assets and contracts of a major defense contractor that is facing significant legal and operational challenges. The slide displayed the Blackstone Industries logo, along with financial projections showing how the acquisition would position Phoenix Aerospace as one of the top 2 defense contractors in the United States. This acquisition will allow us to combine Phoenix Aerospace's innovative capabilities with established manufacturing facilities and client relationships, creating synergies that benefit our government clients while providing career opportunities for talented professionals who deserve better leadership. The presentation concluded with contact information for Phoenix Aerospace's business development team and an invitation for interested professionals to explore career opportunities with the defense industry's fastest-growing company. As I left the stage, I could see Marcus and my father in the audience, their faces reflecting shock, anger, and the beginning of understanding about how completely they had been outmaneuvered. But the real drama began 30 minutes later, when FBI agents entered the conference venue and arrested Marcus, my father, and 2 other Blackstone Industries executives on federal charges related to their criminal activities. The arrests were conducted with maximum visibility, ensuring that every conference attendee would witness the dramatic downfall of 2 people who had been respected industry leaders just hours earlier. The contrast between Phoenix Aerospace's triumphant presentation and Blackstone Industries' criminal exposure created exactly the narrative I had been building for 3 years. Phoenix Aerospace represented the future of ethical innovation, while Blackstone Industries represented the corruption and incompetence of established players who had lost their way. But I wasn't finished with my revenge. The final phase involved acquiring Blackstone Industries' most valuable assets at distressed prices, while their leadership was focused on criminal defense rather than business operations. The federal indictments against Marcus and my father created exactly the business crisis I had been planning to exploit. Blackstone Industries' stock price collapsed by 60% within a week of the arrests, as investors fled from a company facing potential criminal liability in leadership instability. Government contracts worth over $2 billion were placed under review by procurement officials who were concerned about doing business with a contractor facing federal corruption charges. Several major commercial clients canceled contracts or demanded renegotiation of terms to protect themselves from association with the scandal. Most importantly for my acquisition strategy, Blackstone Industries' board of directors was desperate to find a solution that would preserve shareholder value while distancing the company from the criminal activities of its former leadership. The acquisition negotiations began 2 weeks after the arrests, when Blackstone Industries' board contacted Phoenix Aerospace about a potential merger that would combine our companies while eliminating the legal and operational problems created by Marcus and my father's criminal activities. "Mr. Blackstone," said Margaret Foster, Blackstone Industries' lead independent director, "our board believes that a combination with Phoenix Aerospace could create significant value for both companies' shareholders while providing stability during this challenging transition period." The board was offering to sell Blackstone Industries to Phoenix Aerospace for approximately $1.8 billion, which represented a 40% discount from the company's value before the criminal scandal broke. But I had been preparing for this negotiation for 3 years, and I had developed a much more advantageous strategy than a simple acquisition at market prices. "Ms. Foster, I appreciate the board's interest in exploring strategic alternatives. However, Phoenix Aerospace's position is that Blackstone Industries' legal liabilities and operational challenges require a more comprehensive restructuring than a traditional merger could provide." Over the next 6 weeks, I negotiated what became one of the most advantageous acquisitions in defense industry history. Instead of purchasing Blackstone Industries as a going concern, Phoenix Aerospace structured the transaction as an asset acquisition that allowed us to select the most valuable parts of the company while leaving the legal liabilities and operational problems with the existing corporate entity. We acquired Blackstone Industries' manufacturing facilities, government contracts, intellectual property portfolio, and client relationships for $800 million, less than half of what the company had been worth before the criminal scandal. But we did not acquire the corporate entity itself, which meant that Phoenix Aerospace was not responsible for any legal judgments, criminal penalties, or civil damages that might result from Marcus and my father's illegal activities. The transaction was structured so that existing Blackstone Industries shareholders receive Phoenix Aerospace stock worth approximately 30% of their original investment, while Phoenix Aerospace acquired assets worth over $4 billion for a fraction of their market value. More importantly, the acquisition included employment offers for every Blackstone Industries employee who met Phoenix Aerospace's standards for ethical conduct and professional competence. This allowed us to recruit the remaining talent that we wanted while eliminating employees who had been complicit in or aware of the criminal activities. The acquisition was completed 9 months after the FBI arrests, creating a combined company with annual revenue of over $8 billion and a dominant position in every major sector of the defense and aerospace industries. But the most satisfying aspect of the acquisition wasn't financial. It was the complete reversal of the power dynamic that had defined my relationship with Marcus and my father for the previous 5 years. Marcus, who had stolen my inheritance and my fiancée while positioning himself as my superior in business acumen, was now facing 25 years in federal prison in personal bankruptcy from legal fees and civil judgments. My father, who had chosen Marcus over me as his successor and had lectured me about earning leadership through competence, was facing similar criminal penalties while watching his life's work become a subsidiary of the company I had built to compete with him. Amanda, who had betrayed me for someone she believed offered better opportunities, was now divorced from Marcus and working as a marketing coordinator for a small consulting firm while facing potential criminal charges as an accessory to his crimes. And I had built an empire that was larger and more successful than anything they had ever controlled, using strategies and relationships that I had developed independently of the family business that had originally been my birthright. The criminal trials of Marcus and my father began 18 months after their arrest and provided the final act of justice that completed my revenge story. The prosecution's case was overwhelming, built on the financial evidence that Michael Chen had provided, the communications that Amanda had documented, and the additional intelligence that federal investigators had developed during their investigation. Marcus was charged with 17 counts, including bribery, embezzlement, industrial espionage, money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud the government. The prosecution demonstrated that he had stolen over $30 million from Blackstone Industries, while simultaneously bribing government officials to secure contracts worth over $500 million. My father was charged with 12 counts related to the bribery schemes and the fraudulent reporting that had concealed illegal activities from shareholders and government oversight agencies. His charges carried potential sentences totaling 45 years in federal prison, but the most devastating testimony came from Amanda, who had agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for immunity from criminal prosecution. Marcus Morrison told me that Ryan Blackstone was too naive and idealistic to succeed in competitive business environments. She testified during Marcus's trial. He said that Ryan focused too much on developing products and building client relationships, while successful executives needed to focus on maximizing profits through any means necessary. Did Mr. Morrison explain what he meant by any means necessary? Asked the federal prosecutor. He said that government contracts were awarded based on relationships and financial incentives, rather than technical capabilities. He said that companies that weren't willing to pay bribes would lose market share to companies that understood how business really worked. Amanda's testimony continued for 3 days, during which she provided detailed evidence about the criminal schemes, the offshore bank accounts, and the systematic fraud that had characterized Marcus's leadership of Blackstone Industries. But her testimony also revealed the personal motivations that had driven her betrayal of our relationship in her alliance with Marcus. I believe that Marcus offered better long-term prospects than Ryan Blackstone, she admitted under cross-examination. Marcus was more aggressive about pursuing profitable opportunities, and I thought that would translate into greater financial success. Did you consider the legal risks associated with Mr. Morrison's business strategies? I thought his methods were unethical, but not necessarily illegal. I didn't understand the full scope of his criminal activities until after we were married and I had access to detailed financial records. The trials lasted 6 months and resulted in convictions on all major charges. Marcus was sentenced to 28 years in federal. After the sentencing hearing, I walked out of the federal courthouse knowing that my revenge was complete, but that my real achievement was building something better than what had been taken from me. 5 years after Marcus's arrest, I was standing in the boardroom of Phoenix Aerospace's new corporate headquarters, looking out at the Chicago skyline where my grandfather had originally built the Blackstone Industries empire that I had eventually acquired and transformed. Phoenix Aerospace was now the second largest defense contractor in the United States, with annual revenue of $12 billion in operations in 37 countries. We employed over 40,000 people and had been responsible for developing several breakthrough technologies that had strengthened American military capabilities while creating thousands of civilian applications. More importantly, we had built a corporate culture based on the values that Marcus and my father had abandoned: innovation, integrity, respect for employees, and commitment to serving clients' mission-critical requirements, rather than just maximizing short-term profits. The boardroom where I now held strategic planning meetings was larger and more technologically sophisticated than the room where my father had announced Marcus's succession 5 years earlier. The 12 board members who advised Phoenix Aerospace's leadership included former military commanders, technology innovators, and business leaders who had been selected for their expertise and their commitment to ethical governance. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said as I opened our quarterly board meeting, "I want to begin today's session by reflecting on what we've accomplished together and what we hope to achieve in the years ahead." The presentation that followed demonstrated Phoenix Aerospace's financial performance, technological innovations, client satisfaction metrics, and employee engagement scores, all of which exceeded industry benchmarks and represented sustainable, competitive advantages, rather than short-term tactical victories. But our most important achievement isn't measurable through financial metrics or operational statistics. Our most important achievement is proving that companies can build lasting success through ethical practices, innovative thinking, and genuine commitment to serving something larger than their own immediate interests. After the board meeting concluded, I walked through Phoenix Aerospace's research and development facilities, where teams of engineers and scientists were developing the next generation of technologies that would define the defense and aerospace industries for decades to come. The people working in these facilities included many former Blackstone Industries employees who had joined Phoenix Aerospace during our rapid expansion, but they also included new graduates from the country's top universities who had chosen to begin their careers with a company known for innovation and integrity. "Mr. Blackstone," said Dr. Sarah Kim, who had become Phoenix Aerospace's Chief Technology Officer and one of my most trusted advisors, "the advanced materials project that we discussed last quarter is ahead of schedule and under budget. We should be ready to begin prototype testing within 6 months." "That's excellent news, Sarah. What's your assessment of the commercial applications for this technology?" "We're looking at potential applications in renewable energy, transportation, construction, and consumer electronics. Conservative estimates suggest a market opportunity of over $50 billion within 10 years. This was exactly the kind of long-term thinking that had distinguished Phoenix Aerospace from competitors who focused on quarterly earnings rather than sustainable innovation. We were building technologies and capabilities that would create value for decades, not just until the next financial reporting period. That evening, I had dinner with Elena Martinez, the brilliant aerospace engineer who had become my wife 2 years earlier. Elena worked for a different division of Phoenix Aerospace, developing satellite systems for climate monitoring and disaster response, work that combined cutting-edge technology with humanitarian applications that made the world safer and more sustainable. "Ryan, I saw the news coverage of the quarterly earnings report. The analysts are calling Phoenix Aerospace one of the best-managed companies in any industry. It's gratifying to get recognition for the culture and values we built. But I'm more proud of the work our people are doing to solve real problems and create lasting value." Elena smiled with the kind of understanding that came from sharing not just personal life, but also professional mission and values. "Do you ever think about Marcus and your father? Do you ever wonder whether they understand what they lost by choosing corruption over integrity?" I thought about her question seriously. Marcus was serving his sentence in a federal minimum security facility, where he would remain for at least 20 more years. My father was in a similar facility, where his age and health problems had made his imprisonment particularly difficult. I think they understand that their choices led to consequences they didn't anticipate, but I don't think they understand the fundamental lesson about sustainable success versus short-term advantage. What do you mean? I mean that everything they stole or corrupted was ultimately temporary. The money they embezzled is gone. The contracts they secured through bribes have been terminated. The relationships they built through deception have been exposed and destroyed. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about the thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on Phoenix Aerospace's continued success, and the millions of people whose safety and security were protected by the technologies we developed. But everything we built is designed to last. Our innovations will continue creating value long after we're gone. Our employees will continue developing their careers and contributing to something meaningful. Our clients will continue benefiting from technologies that make their missions more effective and more successful. And you think that's better revenge than just destroying the people who betrayed you? I think it's the only kind of revenge that actually matters. Anyone can destroy their enemies, but building something better than what was taken from you, that requires vision, discipline, and commitment that most people don't possess. Elena nodded thoughtfully. So your revenge wasn't really about Marcus and your father. It was about proving that you could build something better than what they tried to steal from you. Exactly. And proving that ethical leadership creates more sustainable success than corruption and betrayal. 10 years after inheriting my grandfather's company through acquisition rather than succession, I was invited to speak at the Harvard Business School about entrepreneurship, corporate leadership, and business ethics. The lecture hall was packed with MBA students who were preparing for careers in consulting, investment banking, technology, and corporate management. These were ambitious young people who understood that business success required intelligence, determination, and strategic thinking, but who might not yet understand the importance of integrity and long-term thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, I began my presentation. I want to tell you a story about betrayal, revenge, and the difference between short-term tactical victories and sustainable strategic success. Over the next hour, I told the complete story of how Marcus had stolen my inheritance, how my father had chosen him over me, how Amanda had betrayed our relationship, and how I had responded by building something better than what had been taken from me. The lesson I want you to take from this story isn't that revenge is an effective business strategy. The lesson is that sustainable success comes from building value for other people, rather than just extracting value for yourself. I clicked to a slide showing Phoenix Aerospace's current financial performance, technological portfolio, and social impact metrics. Phoenix Aerospace now employs over 60,000 people worldwide and generates more economic value than Blackstone Industries ever achieved at its peak. But more importantly, we've built a culture and a set of capabilities that will continue creating value for decades to come. The next slide showed photographs of our employees, our facilities, our technologies, and our client partnerships. This wasn't built through revenge or destruction of competitors. This was built through innovation, integrity, and commitment to serving something larger than our own immediate interests. During the question and answer session, a student asked the question I had been expecting. Mr. Blackstone, do you think you would have been more successful if you had simply accepted your father's decision and focused on building your career within Blackstone Industries rather than starting a competing company? I thought about the question seriously, considering not just the business outcomes, but the personal growth and the broader impact on the people whose lives had been affected by my decisions. That's an excellent question, and it goes to the heart of what leadership really means. If I had accepted my father's decision, I would have spent my career working for people who had demonstrated that they valued political maneuvering over competence and personal advantage over ethical conduct. More importantly, I would have been complicit in a system that rewarded corruption and punished integrity. The thousands of people who now work for Phoenix Aerospace in meaningful, well-compensated jobs would instead be working for a company that prioritized short-term profits over long-term value creation. I paused to ensure the students understood the broader implications of individual career decisions. Sometimes the most important choice you can make is to refuse to participate in systems that compromise your values, even when that refusal comes with significant personal and professional costs. Building something better than what you're offered isn't just about personal satisfaction. It's about creating opportunities for other people and demonstrating that ethical leadership produces better outcomes than corruption and betrayal. After the lecture, several students approached me to discuss their own career decisions and their concerns about maintaining integrity in competitive business environments. But the conversation that stayed with me was with a young woman who reminded me of myself at the beginning of my career. "Mr. Blackstone, I'm graduating next month, and I have job offers from several consulting firms and investment banks. But I'm also considering starting my own company based on technology I developed during my undergraduate research. How do I decide between a stable career path and the risk of entrepreneurship?" I thought about her question and how it paralleled the choice I had faced when Marcus stole my inheritance, and I had to decide whether to accept a diminished role or build something new from scratch. The question isn't whether entrepreneurship is riskier than working for established companies. The question is whether you want to spend your career building value for other people's vision or developing your own capabilities and creating opportunities for others. What I learned from my experience is that the greatest risk isn't failure, it's succeeding at something that doesn't matter to you or that compromises your values in ways you don't recognize until it's too late. That evening, I was having dinner with Elena and our 2 young children, reflecting on the path that had led from family betrayal to business empire, to personal fulfillment that exceeded anything I could have imagined during the darkest period of my competition with Marcus. "Daddy," asked my 8-year-old son Michael, "why did your family not want you to run their company?" It was a question that required careful consideration because I wanted to teach my children about resilience and integrity without filling them with bitterness about the betrayals that had shaped my early career. Sometimes people make decisions based on what they think will benefit them in the short term, without considering what's best for everyone in the long term. Your grandfather chose Uncle Marcus because he thought Marcus would be better at protecting the company's profits, but he didn't consider whether Marcus would be better at building something that would last. And that's why you built your own company? I built Phoenix Aerospace because I believed I could create something better than what already existed. Not just better for me, but better for the people who would work there, and better for the clients who would depend on our products. My 6-year-old daughter Emma looked up from her drawing. "And now your company is bigger than Grandpa's company was?" "Yes, sweetheart, but more importantly, our company helps keep people safe and creates jobs for thousands of families. That's what success really means, building something that makes other people's lives better." That night after the children were asleep, Elena and I sat on our porch overlooking Lake Michigan, discussing the future we were building together and the legacy we hoped to leave for our children. "Ryan, do you ever regret the way things happened? Do you ever wish your family had chosen you from the beginning instead of forcing you to prove yourself through competition?" I thought about her question while looking out at the water, where my grandfather had first dreamed of building an empire that would last for generations. I used to think I wanted their approval and recognition more than anything else in the world. But what I learned is that approval from people who don't share your values isn't worth having. And you think you're better off for having been forced to build something from scratch. I think I'm better off for having learned that sustainable success comes from creating value for other people, rather than just extracting value from systems that already exist. The company I built is larger and more successful than Blackstone Industries ever was. But more importantly, it's built on foundations that will last. The people who work for Phoenix Aerospace believe in what they're doing. The clients we serve trust us to prioritize their needs over our profits. The technologies we develop make the world safer and more sustainable. Elena nodded, understanding the distinction between success that comes from taking from others and success that comes from creating value that didn't previously exist. "So your revenge was really about building a legacy that your grandfather would have been proud of, even though your father chose someone else to carry it forward." My revenge was proving that integrity and innovation create more lasting value than corruption and betrayal, and proving that the person who was supposedly not worthy of inheritance was actually the most capable of honoring what that inheritance was supposed to represent. As I finish writing this account, Phoenix Aerospace continues to grow and evolve, developing technologies that will define the next generation of aerospace and defense capabilities, while maintaining the values that made our success possible. Marcus remains in federal prison, where he will spend the next 15 years paying for his choices about how to compete and how to treat people who trusted him. My father died in prison 3 years ago, having never acknowledged that his decision to choose corruption over integrity had ultimately destroyed everything he spent his lifetime building. Amanda remarried and now works as a communications director for a nonprofit organization, apparently having learned that sustainable happiness comes from building something meaningful rather than just positioning yourself to benefit from other people's success. But the real measure of success isn't what happened to the people who betrayed me. It's what we built from the ashes of that betrayal. Phoenix Aerospace now employs over 100,000 people in 43 countries. We've been responsible for developing technologies that have saved thousands of lives, protected national security, and created civilian applications that make daily life better for millions of people. We've also demonstrated that companies can achieve extraordinary success while maintaining the highest standards of integrity, treating employees with respect, and prioritizing long-term value creation over short-term profit maximization. The business empire that Marcus thought he was stealing from me was actually much smaller than what I was capable of building when I had the freedom to implement my own vision and values. The inheritance that my father thought I didn't deserve turned out to be less important than the capabilities and character that enabled me to create something better than what I would have inherited. And the revenge that began with family betrayal ultimately became a story about building lasting value that will continue benefiting people long. The corporate crown.